because it's been that kind of day. So welcome again, everybody. We are doing Welcome to Public School, Building High Quality Transitions. Today is Module 2, the second of our 4-part series. And today we're going to be looking at student and family engagements. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this session for future use. The first recording has been put on our website. The link to that is in the chat room. And you can go there. All the PowerPoints and modules are there. And the recordings will be there. If you are working in a group with like educators, a team that you work with together, please work together on activities or discussion points. And then when we do breakout rooms, if everybody is in the same room, we're going to ask you to just let us know in the chat box, but we'll do that when we get to breakout rooms. And then also please feel free to utilize the chat box with any questions that you have. We'll pause when appropriate. Leanne's going to look at the chat box for us. And then if it's appropriate at that time, we will address the question. If not, we'll wait till the end of the session. And on to today's objectives. So today we are looking at understanding the importance of collaborating with families prior to the kindergarten entry year. We're looking at understanding how we establish meaningful homeschool connections that build strong family engagement in the transition process. And then we're also looking to identify aspects of transitions related to health, executive functioning, and other development in children, and gain an understanding and an ability to share this information with parents and caregivers. And to get us started today, I have a quote that I'm going to read. As we saw in Module 1, we talked about how children come from all different backgrounds and experiences and how their families are very diverse. All experiences differ, home experiences, community experiences vary, activities that they're engaged in are different, and all of these differences play a part in shaping each child who enroll in your classroom in the fall, which make each child and family unique. So the thought around this is children are not innately ready or not ready for school. Their skills and development are strongly influenced by their families and through their interactions with other people and environments before coming to school. So just a thought around that. Today's session, we talked about last week that we are utilizing the Ready Child series from this Institution of Education Sciences. Today, we're going to actually have 2 of those documents. The first one is the Ready Family, the first one for today, second in the series. This document helps explore ways that families can be ready for their child to make the transition into kindergarten. It also considers ways that families connect with schools and how educators and transition team members can work with families to engage them in the process of the transition and support learning at home. Okay, so now we have a quick video. This is a video. We're not going to watch the whole thing. It's about an 8.5-minute video. We're going to watch around 5 minutes or so of it. This video is a Head Start video from their eClick site, and it is related to families and how they're engaging with not only their providers, their Head Start classrooms, their private childcare providers or other preschool experiences, and how we working together to sort of support them through those transitions. So while we're watching this, I want you to be please thinking about or writing down some of what you're hearing parents and caregivers talk about their emotions, and then other key takeaways around building relationships with families and caregivers. And let me go ahead and start it. Hopefully this works. It has worked for me all day.
I am most definitely excited for my little one to go to kindergarten, and I know she's definitely ready and prepared.
We experience transitions every day. Some transitions are smaller, like moving from one activity to another. Others may be bigger, like changing schools or jobs. Learning to transition from one thing to another is a valuable skill for young children to have and can make a difference in school success.
Good job.
One of the most important transitions is going to kindergarten. Families and Head Start staff play critical roles in the transition to kindergarten. Research has shown that when parents are actively involved in their children's transitions, children are happier and more self-confident when they get to kindergarten, and that can help them become better learners. The transition to kindergarten can cause mixed emotions for every
to obviously, so you mean they will forgive
experience, usually fear, families, parents, and other situations. Prepared, they may want to under predictable.
in the center kindergarten when it's your own child. It's a little bit different.
There's all a lot of connection school because I like
About help to head and how and to share relating a question about interest, relation.
I am for my child. We met. I do it. To comment other like our
Kindergartens.
Your school before stresses we had set of circumstances because you knew there was your child.
Provide access one.
in this
Present families.
lawyer. I think we have to teach the weeks that we
Start being actual families.
Okay, we got about 5.5 minutes through that video. They do talk about alignment in the next couple of minutes, and it's, I would encourage everybody to watch through to the end if you have a chance to. I think that link is going into the chat box as well to the video. So if you want to take just a moment or two and throw in the chat box any thoughts that you had around key takeaways for building relationships with families and caregivers, and then some of the emotions that parents notice. If anybody wants to unmute, you're welcome to do that too, and we can have a conversation. Yeah, I can't see if anything's going into the chat. So if you want to read out anything that anybody's putting in there, that would be amazing.
So far, Marcy, no one has entered anything in the chat box.
Okay.
Good.
I'll give another few seconds and then we can move on to the next slide.
So Tina shared parents are sometimes nervous and excited. Sue shared that trust is important. Sure is. Pam shared families feel unsure and need information and resources. Tracy commented fear of unknown is the most for both kids and parents. Tammy shared lots of anxiety.
I agree with all of those. Interestingly enough, I was actually originally going to stop that video just a hair earlier, but the piece that the mom was talking about on of going into kindergarten and not having that trust there, and I think that, you know, was a little unsettling and that sort of thing, and how that had to be built. I thought that was really, really important. So I'm glad that you picked up on that one and called that one out. Okay, moving on. So we're going to look at collaborating with families, and we're going to start on this slide and do a little activity throughout the rest of the session. I'm going to read through my information first, and then we'll talk about that. So when children transition into new programs, they're navigating the following for the first time. A lot of this went back to last week that we did review this, but they're looking at new and possibly unfamiliar school buildings and physical surroundings, playgrounds, all of that. There are different rules and expectations for children and for adults. They're looking at you know, bus schedules are drop off and pick up the same. What is the procedure there? It's all different everywhere. Receiving information, expectations around that, and then communicating with schools and teachers. There are different ways of learning that are new. Students may have transitioned from a childcare, daycare, or family care setting, or a public pre-K, or just from being at home. So all of those, what they're going into is going to be completely new for them. A lot of new relationships and engaging with new peers and adults, and not only the classroom teacher, but there will be new service providers for children with IEPs. There'll be office staff, bus drivers, you know, kitchen staff, a whole bunch of new adults and peers in the building, and other families. And then, of course, there'll be many changes in schedules. There'll be changes in their daily schedule, in their weekly schedule, and then for parents, monthly and yearly. School obviously does not run full year, and it does not run, you know, after care is another change in schedule, before care, that sort of thing. And then differences in enrollment procedures that may be much more involved in that of their current childcare preschool program, or if they're coming from home, they've never been through that before, and they won't know maybe where to get a birth certificate or that they even need one. So that information is really important, and it's things that parents navigate for the first time sometimes. So our activity, after watching the video and hearing about collaborating with families, I'd love for you to just grab a piece of paper and something to write with. We're going to start the activity here, and the next piece of the activity will be a few slides in. What I'd love you to do is write down 3 ideas of emotions that you would like to cultivate with families. So I'm going to give you just a moment to do that. And then while you're doing that, I will do a chat room check if there's anything new that in the chat room. So you can write down your 3 emotions that you would like to help cultivate with families during the transition to kindergarten. And then we'll move on to the next part of the activity.
Nothing new in the chat box, Marcy.
Okay, so if you have your 3 things, we're going to have 3 emotions. We're going to go ahead and move on. We're going to look at talking about relationship building. Building positive relationships with families and caregivers during the year prior to children transitioning into kindergarten, so that pre-K year, can really help alleviate anxiety, not only for families, but for children as well, and for educators. Establishing these relationships and understanding the unique needs each family has prior to entering kindergarten really enables our educators to be intentional in transition planning. And so we're going to list some strategies and think about some things that we're currently doing across the next slides. It's also important to note that we're talking about intentional transition planning in the last sentence on this slide. And module 4 is going to be all about building those year-long intentional transition plans. So I want you to really consider keeping your thoughts and any writings that you have today to bring back to module 4, because we will be utilizing those. And now a quick quote from a Maine parent. So in part of this project, building these modules, training modules, we did a survey with educators across the state, educators and childcare providers, and we also did a survey for parents and caregivers. And we looked at sort of what was happening across the state around kindergarten transitions, what was happening really well, what families were hoping to get, what they weren't getting, that sort of thing. And so this was a quote that we got from a family that I thought was really, really important. So we added this in. So just read this out real quick. Establishing a strong connection, including great foundational relationships with adults and positive interactions with children and teachers, is crucial. This means looking into ways of supporting children and establishing routines and communication for the appropriate development of all children, and supporting parents in understanding what their role is daily in their child's life. Parents need to know how the dynamic works between themselves and teachers, and how this fosters a relationship with the child's school and the experience they will have. This positive relationship helps grow love and respect of learning. I think that sums it up pretty well. So let's look at why these relationships are so important. Families will be more likely to be engaged with the school in the setting when they feel more familiar with that setting and have earned that trust, built that trust that we talked about earlier. Families will have access to information well beforehand around enrollment schedule and other items that are important when those relationships are strong. Families and children will understand that school and education is important and feel welcome into the school community. A lot of times it's important to consider that we do have families that maybe as a child did not have a positive experience in school, and they can bring that to their own children or in their family. So when we are welcoming them and they're building that trust, they're understanding that education is important, and that will go right on to their children as well. And then connecting with families also happens when educators connect with community providers, such as private and family childcare and preschool centers and Head Start programs. And we're going to dig a lot deeper into those community connections in module 3. So what I would love you to do now is take that piece of paper where you wrote your 3 emotions on, And so you have 3 emotions that we'd like to cultivate. And now we're going to go down a line and write 2 examples of current strategies that you're using to promote strong relationships with families in your school or program. So we'll have 3 emotions, and then we'll have 2 examples of current strategies that you're using that are promoting positive emotions and relationship building with families. And I'm going to give you just a moment to write those 2 down, and then we'll move on. Okay, so if everybody has their 2 examples written down, we'll go ahead and move on. We're going to look at fostering the homeschool connection. One area of importance in fostering the homeschool connection involves family engagement. There are many changes for families and children, as we talked about, when they enter public schools. For example, children are often transported by bus, so parents aren't dropping off and picking up students daily, which means that limits the opportunities that the families and parents have to connect with caregivers in the morning or in the afternoon during drop off or pickup, which is something that if their child is in a program, they're probably very used to. So the next few slides, we're going to look at some ways that educators can build relationship with families to keep connections strong. It's also important to note that having a strong family relationship with a school can yield positive long-term outcomes for children. So fostering homeschool connections. The quote at the bottom is another quote from a Maine pre-K teacher in one of our surveys. She notes that building relationships is huge and guides all that she does daily. Families, children, staff, relationships are key. So keeping that in mind, some ideas or ways around fostering the homeschool connection. Some programs do home visits, visiting families in their home to learn about the family, learn about the child, see them in an environment that they are comfortable in because it's their home, which can sometimes lead to stronger conversations and relationship building. You can also learn a lot about the child and family interests, culture, and different values that they may have. You can invite families into the school to visit classrooms and tour the school, meet new teachers and other staff who are in the building. Meet with families and conduct transition interviews or ask them to complete a get to know us form. We do have a facilitator guide that is in the link to the website that I shared earlier. Also, I think Leon's going to put the link to a sort of get to know you interview form that we built as a sample. But it's really important on, the child's, what name do they prefer and where did they go to school and who lives in their home and, important things that families want us to know about their children. So coming into that, we have that, there's already that connection. And then another way to foster would be workshops and networking for parents of young children. And there's so many different ways to do this. A few ideas that I have written down are you could do meetings with former and current kindergarten parents who could help guide that transition the year 2. So students who are in their pre-K year or 4-year-old year going into kindergarten the next year, have those current parents work with the incoming parents. Coffee talk, parents and caregivers making connections with school staff, current and former parents also. Parent groups and clubs in school, so boosters clubs, PTA, and other parent groups can be introduced with information on how and why to get involved, and that can help grow those connections. Talk about how parents and caregivers could become involved with the school going forward, volunteer opportunities. I don't know if anybody's doing field trips right now, but hopefully one day we will be doing those again. Opportunities to work with the school and teachers in that way. And then informational sessions around child development or just a simple question and answer session for incoming parents. And moving on, we are going to talk about ways how we support families to participate in these events. So some of these ideas would be to offer events at different times during the day or evening. So you may have families who are working nights and they can come to a morning coffee, but you may also have families who are working during the day or have younger siblings and aren't able to attend until the evening. They may also have, if they have younger siblings, you may want to consider doing a childcare component if you're doing an evening sort of thing. Offering online events and gatherings right now is a really good way to do that. You'll also want to consider providing materials in home languages. So that home language survey that we do upon enrollment into school is going to be really important. You may look at needing interpreters. You may need to look at just materials that are in language that are in less common languages, and offer those to families. We did see in the video that the one, I believe they were Spanish-speaking family, were very happy that they had materials and they had support in their home language. They could understand that better. So it's a really important way to support our families. And then engaging in CDS IEP transition meetings in the spring. So you may not know, but every child that leaves the spring prior to kindergarten with a current IEP will go through a transition meeting, and generally that's held at the school. It's usually school personnel, including new service providers, new kindergarten teachers, new principals, that sort of thing. And then parents are a big part of that. And then also providers and pre-K teachers will come in also and really just talk about the student's strengths and goals and how they've been best meeting that, what the student may need when they transition into kindergarten. And that way, it's a really good way for providers and educators to talk about specific children and what their needs are, and have those educators then be ready to individualize for that child in the fall. We talked about offering sessions for families about what to expect in the upcoming year in person, and then optional online platforms. So what the year will look like. And then tip sheets for parents and families around child development and activities for them and their child. And we do have a link to a tip sheet that we put together around development. And I think that will go in the chat also. So those are some really great ways to support families around transitioning and get them comfortable and start building that trust in those positive relationships. And then also noted from a parent in our survey, consistent communication through one method would be helpful. With the crazy academic year, expectations were not clearly communicated and various forms of communication were used for different things. So it was easy to miss important information. So we want to keep that in mind as we go forward. So the next slide, we actually have a video that was put together from an educator here in Maine. She is a current pre-K teacher, and she has put together a video for us. It's like she's speaking to parents about what they should expect and how they can be involved and what they need to know around coming in and their children transition to kindergarten. So we are going to go ahead and watch this. And then please think about any takeaways or important things or any ideas that might be new to you as well. See if I can start it. Here we go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Hansen. I taught both first grade and kindergarten for more than 20 years. And most recently, I've transitioned to teaching pre-K. Starting school can be an intimidating but exciting time for both you and your child. I'd like to talk with you about some things that you can do to help prepare for this transition. First, work to create and maintain great relationships with your child's teachers. I cannot stress enough the importance of great relationships. Educators know that a child's most important teachers are their first teachers. That's you, other family members, and caregivers. This is because you know your child better than anyone. And research shows that children thrive when their families and or their caregivers are involved. Get to know some community each other, pay or activity offered school, home, a place or school, the conversation via email in case information child understand experience that more to your engagement question. If I ask a question, I'll get to say if your family strength and tangible that you're change there of do you child my awful relationship to and very school read all the new if you're late when you're share with her that message you to community, whether you're flaxing or no closing. Remember, and teachers are your education journey. We have to share topics are more about that can send their play, learn, and to their teacher, child being.
Okay, so I think she did a really good job on that video, and I feel like we should share that far and wide with all of our parents and educators. I think there's a lot of important information there. Next, we're going to move on to a 3-2-1 activity. So let's go back to our list where we had the 3 emotions that we wanted to help cultivate with families. And then we had 2 examples of current strategies that we're using to promote positive emotions and relationship building. So now we're going to write down at the bottom of our list 1 new strategy that you have learned throughout this module so far today that you would like to incorporate in your work. While you're doing that, I am actually going to, oh no, I'm not, sorry. Here we go. We're going to do random breakout rooms with about 3 or 4 people, and we'll have about 3 to 4 minutes to kind of discuss the 3-2-1 of what you have written down. I'm just going to copy and paste and put those into the chat room, but it's not going to let me do that. So again, we have the 3 emotions, we have the 2 examples. So just take a few seconds to write down 1 new strategy you've learned, and Leanne is going to facilitate breakout rooms.
Thanks, Marcy. So I have placed everyone into a chat, into a breakout room, except for those who let me know that you are working collaboratively in a group already. So if you are watching together with your colleagues, you're not going to be assigned, and you should use your own group to talk to for this particular activity. For everyone else, when I open the room, you should be prompted to join a breakout room, and you'll have about 5 minutes for conversation, and then it will bring you back. So I'm going to go ahead now and open up the rooms. Marcy, do you want to pause the recording?
Okay, thank you for the reminder. That is one thing I am very neglectful about. So I would like to take just 1 minute for anybody to pop in any important things around their discussions in the chat room, or if anybody wants to unmute and we can just have a real quick conversation. What your group talked about, what you thought was important, any new strategies that you really are interested in.
Looks like the welcome video was a nice piece. I'll just, as people are sort of thinking and putting ideas in the chat box, I'll also mention that sometimes creating a video tour of your school is really nice to do to welcome families. You can actually get your students involved in helping and talking about what's exciting. Sometimes hearing from other kindergarten age students talk about what they really love about school is helpful. And another strategy that's kind of connected to building those relationships, that's great if you can maybe even work with some community providers to help you with it, is to develop a series of what are called play and learn groups. It's a nice opportunity for families to come together. Kids can play and make friends with other children their own age they may not have met, while you're also getting a chance to work with families and really talk about different things that they can be doing to help support their children as they're getting ready for school. So those are just a couple of other ideas.
Perfect. Is there anything in the chat that we want to read out loud before we move on?
Let me just take a look. Tina was sharing that she loves to ask parents how they console their child, which is really nice, so important in that relationship building and being able to use some consistent strategies. And Laura, this poster is slightly different, and I'm going to pop the link in to that in just a moment for you. Someone said communication is key to building relationships, which then builds trust. It's important to let parents know that it's okay to shoot an email to the teacher no matter what the question or comment. Holly suggested that she likes making a picture book of the classroom, teacher, office, nurse, and has found that to be a really useful tool, especially for students with disabilities. That's a great idea, Holly.
Great idea. Okay, so we'll move on. Just I'm just keeping an eye on the time. I'd like to keep everybody at 4:30, so be respectful of that. So we're going to move on to the second IES document of the guiding documents. This is the Ready Child. It does look a little different, but it's only because the bottom information is on this one and it's not on the other ones. I cut the other ones off when I didn't even realize that I did it differently. So, but the third, so it's important to remember that a child being school ready is important, but do we really know what this means? So it's important to note that children are learning skills on a developmental continuum. They don't all develop at the same rate. And children are working on social, emotional, physical, and cognitive skills all at the same time. Children ready for school have the skills to attend and engage with activities and people, but some children are still learning these skills and they are age ready for the transition into kindergarten. Educators must also be ready and able to meet each child where they are in their developmental level and continuum and understand next steps in that development, and then plan activities individually that enable those children or all children to be successful in meeting their individual goals. So we're going to talk about that for just a moment. Maybe. Okay, so let's talk about the Ready Child. There are many foundational skills that children develop prior to kindergarten entry. Let's see. They display social and emotional skills, including but not limited to interacting socially with others, showing positive self-perception, beginning to understand the emotions of others, and having an ability to interpret and express feelings. Other skills that are developed by children prior to entry are approaches that they can approach learning with enthusiasm and curiosity. They exhibit foundational language and listening skills and present with foundational cognition skills and general knowledge. And at the foundation of it all shows an eagerness for learning. Those are a few of the things that we look at or look for when children are coming into school. What we really are looking at is the whole child concept. Upon their transition into kindergarten, we want to support every aspect of development and able to be able to meet each child where they're at. So I'd love for you all to just take a few seconds and think about what the whole child aspect means to you, and just pop that right in the chat, and we'll do a little bit of talking about that. And Leanne, feel free to just read anything that comes through the chat.
I sure will, Marcy. Nothing yet.
Okay, great. We have just a few more seconds if anybody wants to pop any thinking around whole child into the chat.
Karen shared SEL lessons, not just academics.
Definitely. So some of the other things that we think about when we're looking at the whole child and teaching of the whole child is engaging in all domains of development for each child. So that does include social, emotional, and physical, literacy, language, science, all of those learning domains. Again, we're looking at meeting each child where they are developmentally when they come into the classroom, incorporating family and home culture. One of the things that was talked about in the educator video that we watched was we don't just want to know about home culture, but we want to know what's happening with the family. So if something happens, if something they're going through something hard, or maybe they're going on vacation and it's exciting, how is that affecting the child in school, whether it's positive or negative? Those are really important things to look at. And then we're also going to look at monitoring health and wellness.
Jennifer commented that when she thinks about the whole child, it means more than just looking at their reading text level or math fact fluency rate. Can they collaborate with others? Are they safe? Can they self-regulate? Do they show kindness? Angela mentioned it's about learning their strengths and goals for growth. There isn't a just predefined kindergarten student. Each child is individual. Kathleen talked about recognizing and valuing the skills that children bring to school and then personalizing the learning for them.
Yep.
All great examples of thinking about the whole child and everything they bring.
Exactly. We're looking at all of those strengths that they come in with, and then what their goals and next steps are, and then individualizing the learning around that. Okay, so as we just talked about, milestones go further than academics. So children with these skills are more ready to learn upon their transition into kindergarten. We often think about academic milestones that are the most important when children enter kindergarten, but early educators know that children who lack these important executive functioning skills may have difficulty benefiting from instruction focused on academics. And so there are multiple milestones that are not specific to academics. And so some of those include, like we talked about, demonstrating a curiosity or interest in learning new things, being able to explore new things using their senses, taking turns in cooperating with peers, speaking with and listening to adults and peers, following instructions, whether it's a 1, 2, 3, 4-step direction. Children are going to build up to those multiple step directions, but if they're following instructions, that's a great foundation. Communicating how they're feeling, there's the social emotional piece, and empathizing with other children, working on controlling their impulses, paying attention, and then limiting disruptive behaviors. One link that we want to put in the chat here, we worked last summer on building a learning module for educators, providers, and parents around a developmental continuum, including activities from up to age 10, I believe. And so that is a early learning foundation skills module on the Moose platform. And so if you want to go look through that, there's a lot of information there. So I encourage you to go look through that. And then if you're working with a team, you can look together and discuss some of those things. Also pull information out of that to share with parents, to share with other people on your teams, that sort of thing.
And the other thing, and it's so funny, because we were just getting ready to pop that in there, Jennifer, and that is the Yardsticks book. Great thinking. I just put the link to it in the chat. That's a wonderful text to help you see development across domains for ages 4 to 14. So really, really helpful. And Jennifer could share a great example of how they use that in their district with their parents. I don't know if she wants to come off mute for just a second and share.
Sure, I will. Hi, Leanne. Hi, Marcy. One of the things, Dawn Moore, the principal at Smith School, and I'm the principal at the McGraw School here in RSU 22. And we're taking the Leading Early Learning course where we discovered yardsticks. And one of our, we have to do a project. So Dawn and I worked together to create a slideshow. I've been hosting virtual parent meetings every month on a timely education topic for families. And so for the March 1st, we chose to do yardsticks and looked at just pre-K to 2, grade 2 students, and looked at their cognitive growth, their physical growth, and their social emotional growth. And then what I like about the book is it's a lot of bullet points, so it's really easy to understand and read. And then for the educator piece, which we're going to do as a joint effort at our April staff meetings, is to look at what does that mean in the reading, classroom, and the writing classroom, and in the math classroom. And so that has been really, really great. But if anyone wants that, I have no problem, Leanne and Marcy, sharing our slideshow that we made for families. So if you'd like to share that out, I have no problem with that.
Be great.
That's great, Jen. Yeah, maybe we can even figure out how to incorporate that on the transitions webpage as one of the resources. Thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I have viewed that and PowerPoint that you guys put together, and it's wonderful. I'd love to hear the parent feedback from that. Okay, so moving on, as we're looking at the whole child, we're going to look at partnering with families to foster healthy children. So along with development, whoops, I hit the wrong page. One moment, please. Okay, so this is a resource from the Federal Head Start Office of National Center on Early Child Health and Wellness. And basically it talks about, there's a link that Leanne will put in the chat so you can download and print this. It's great for families, but basically it talks about the different aspects of health: physical health, oral, nutrition, activity, sleep and rest, and then perceptual development, and how school readiness basically begins with health. So if your children are healthy, they're not worrying about something that's hurting them. They're not worrying about, did I have breakfast? They're getting, the health and nutrition that they need. And that is really great for starting school readiness. And so we'll talk about more about this, because the nutrition piece and the oral health and the physical health comes also down to community resources. So we're going to dive more into this in module 3 when we're looking at community engagement. But what we do know is that healthy children are ready to learn. So along with development, child health is a very important piece of children being ready to learn. Meeting these basic needs enhances engagement in learning and fosters better attendance at school. And the basic needs are what we just talked about: physical, oral, mental, and nutritional health. When families have access to an understanding of these pieces, children have the opportunity for school success. So some things to think about when you're considering this and possible action steps in your program or school is, how do you know that children are healthy and ready to learn? What data do you use when we're looking at children and their health? How do you communicate that connection between children's health and learning outcomes to staff and to families? And how do you screen for and manage health concerns that may impact school success? How do you address children's health statuses when planning and conducting ongoing child assessment? Does that play a part in there? And then again, we'll talk around module 3 around making use of community resources to support children's ongoing health and wellness. And so the question is, how can we help foster the ready child? In the year prior to kindergarten enrollment, we can help parents and caregivers strengthen their child's abilities by providing tip sheets that we shared earlier about development and milestones, connecting with families that we talked about around community resources for health that includes physicians' offices and mental health services. We can include workshops and other community informational sessions in our year-long transition plan, which we're going to sample building out in module 4. And then it's really important to consider, and if you're not doing this, including a health history piece in your family interview. So not necessarily to go super deep into, great grandfather's history, that sort of thing, but more, has your child lost teeth? Are they still losing teeth? Has your child ever had a broken bone? Are they worried about certain activities and getting hurt and that sort of thing? It's really another way just to get to know your child and your family, and then to really understand some of those pieces that they bring to the table. And then we're just going to tie it all together. So if you're working in a group today, you could work together to look at these questions and discuss them. We were going to, if we had time, do another breakout room, but it is 4:29, and so we do not have time. But just real quick, the questions to think about to tie it together are: what emotions play a part in transitions for adults and children, and how can we work to alleviate negatives and build positives? When thinking about building relationships with families, what are some important things to do and remember? And then what are the developmental milestones that should be discussed around children entering kindergarten? So when you're looking at these questions, save these thoughts, because as we're building out our plans in module 4, we will come back to them. This is our, again, website. We're wrapping up now. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or put your, in the chat box. This is just the ending slide with our website and then resources and things you can find there. And I think we have the link to pop into the chat room also. The next module, module 3, is going to happen next Thursday, which is the, sorry, I had that information ready, the 24th from 3:30 to 4:30. And we're going to be looking at school and community engagement. We'll be looking at the Ready School and the Ready Community. And then finally, any questions, thoughts around digging deeper? Please unmute yourself. Like I said, throw anything in the chat box. If you don't have anything, you can scan, open your camera on your smartphone, scan the QR code. It'll take you to the exit ticket and then to the certificate. And there's also a link that'll go into the chat if you don't have the ability to do the QR code scanning. So I will leave that up. And like I said, please feel free to unmute yourselves in our chat box and ask any questions.
I also popped the link into the chat box if it's easier to just click on that and do it on your computer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for today. This is wonderful. Thank you.
For coming. See you next Thursday.